New scum. New scum.
New scum.
News, scum.
Let's start with some good news, Matt.
What's happened?
So the Labour Party have done a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. Isn't that good?
Yeah, that is good. That means that people will be warmer in the winter. Won't have to spend as much money on things and run out of and die
Exactly. And do you know why they did it?
because the economy is improving and therefore they were able to afford it.
Exactly. That's the reason, according to Keir Starmer. So in the BBC, oh man, shit, I'm low on battery. Gone badly already. My computer's gonna die if I don't plug it in.
So what's the real reason for them uh allowing the fuel allowance, giving the fuel allowance?
I thought you were not into conspiracies, Matt.
No, just alternative explanation.
Well, I don't know. This is what Keir Starmer said in the BBC.
Mm.
That the reason the government could expand the number of people receiving the payment was because Labour had stabilised the economy.
Mm.
Rachel Reeves said in The Guardian at a speech in Rochdale, "We have listened to the concerns that people had about the level of the means test, and so we will be making changes to that. They will be in place so that pensioners are paid this coming winter."
And they've decided to give free school meals to hundreds of thousands more kids as well. Anyone who's on universal credit.
Well, Rachel Reeves's reason is different from Keir Starmer's. I don't know if you noticed that.
No.
Well, Starmer says it's because they stabilise.
But I'm curious.
Well, I just read it to you. Starmer says they stabilised the economy.
Yeah.
Rachel
And she
Reeves says they've listened to people's concerns.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
Maybe they did both. Maybe Rachel Reeves listened to people's concerns and Keir Starmer looked at the economy.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, is there a third explanation which is really sinister? Is that what you're trying to say?
I want to talk a little bit about Scotland because this is what's really going on, Matt. And this is what Nigel Farage, who's part of the establishment, this is what he doesn't want you to know, right? So when they cut the winter fuel allowance last year, the Scottish government said that they were going to keep it for everyone. Now, they couldn't do that year because when they cut it so close to winter that Scotland couldn't get the money together. But they said, even last year, when the economy was so unstable, that by next year, everybody would get it. Now, the economy is obviously stabilized. No one is questioning Starmer on that. It's been a real success story. But in England and Wales, despite the incredible stabilization, they're not going to have universal payments. They're just going to increase the amount of people, and they haven't even said how many, what the threshold is. In Scotland, before the stabilization in 2024, they said it's going to be universal next year. Yeah. Now it is that year, and they're going to have universal payments for everybody in Scotland.
It's almost like Scotland's a better country than England.
But is it?
I think so.
What is the GDP of Scotland? Do you know?
Well, it would be lower than England because obviously it's a smaller country.
Okay, what about the GDP?
What about the standard of living?
What about the GDP per capita? Is it lower or higher?
Hang on, I'm just reeling from this telling off. GDP per capita. That's a good question. I don't know. I would say it will be lower.
It is lower. Awkwardly. Of course, it's lower. For my argument. You just need to know where my argument's going. You don't.
Yeah.
Need to
GDP in Scotland per person is lower.
It is.
So everyone is poorer. So their such shitty socialist policies have wrecked the country, whereas England's doing great.
Oh shit! No, that's a good argument. Oh, I didn't think about that.
Exactly. Yeah. How are you going to get out of that one?
No, we'll have to cut that. No, what's happened is that despite having a lower GDP.
Yes.
Scotland is giving everybody universal payments, whereas in England you're not getting it. Scotland also, of course, give free education.
Yeah.
So what's going on is
including universities.
Yes, the Scottish people are stealing money from England. The lazy Scots, with their pitiful
as they're often known.
GDP, are taking money from the hard-earned money from the English. Yeah. Who, the working English people And what that means is that we can't have free education. We can't
Yeah.
have universal payments for pensioners. So we need, I'm not saying that we need to kill all the Scots in some
No.
sort of like conveyor belt of death.
That would be no, that wouldn't be right.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I mean,
Mm.
it's an interesting thought.
Yeah,
If you,
it's a possibility.
yes, I
It's
mean,
on the table.
if you think
Nothing's
about
off the table.
Scotland, like what's the population center of Scotland? I mean, it's just the central belt, right? You've got Edinburgh, Glasgow.
Hmm.
So it'd be quite easy to sort of round up all the
Hmm.
Scots and kind of push them into that area.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what you would do, put them all in a deep fat fryer, tell them it's a bath, something like that. Heat the oil slowly, like boiling frogs. They wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
look, I'm not saying that that's on the cards yet. It's certainly not a
Yeah.
policy of the Revenge Party as
No.
it stands.
No.
But
No.
we'll see. We'll see what we
Yeah.
need to do in the future. What I
Yeah.
am saying is that we need to
As
cut Scotland.
economic conditions change.
Yeah, well, we need to cut Scotland off. But Nigel Farage will never tell you that because Nigel Farage, because of the way that the electoral system works in this country, is that it's Britain, right?
Yeah.
And the real problem in Britain is Scotland and to some extent Northern Ireland as well. Get rid of that.
Mm.
But politicians, establishment politicians like Nigel Farage, will never tell you that because they want to win votes
Mm.
all over Britain. They want to win Scottish votes. Only the Revenge Party, which is for the English for the England for the English, that's the
Mm.
Revenge Party. We tell it how it is, which is that Scotland is taking money from England
Hmm.
so that they can all have free everything while we
Hmm.
have to work really hard. And that's why the NHS isn't working. And that's why benefits are being cut.
Mm.
Uh, and that's why the winter fuel allowance isn't what it should be.
NHS, no Scotch hospitals.
Yeah, no,
That's what it should
exactly. Fuck
stand
them.
for.
I mean, you might think, well, this argument's a bit silly, but it's just that you haven't heard it enough. If we
Yeah.
keep banging on about it and started,
Mm.
the great English news channel, 24-hour news, and we had
Hmm.
talking heads on it all the time, and we had radio shows, I think a lot, after a while, sort of 5 or 6 years of hearing that nonsense, people would start to hate the Scots, and we could get on with,
Leaving the Scottish Union.
yeah, if they can join the EU if they want, who cares?
Scotch it means Scotch it.
Yes, exactly. What would it be called? A Well, I guess it would be another. Well, it wouldn't be. It would be an
Yeah.
Englect.
Scotch licks.
No, because Scotland's not leaving. We're leaving.
Well, Brexit as a word never made a great deal of sense
No,
either.
because that's Britain leaving, and now
Yeah.
it's England leaving Britain. So it'd be Englex.
Yeah.
And
So
you'd still have Britain.
England leaves
Britain would
Britain.
be Scotland and Northern Ireland. We'd keep Wales because I mean it doesn't even matter either way, does it? No one would notice what happened to them.
Yeah. Huh. That's another good fix.
Full of great ideas.
The Revenge Party.
Yeah, you're still quite quiet. I don't know why it is.
I don't know either, but I just keep speaking up like this.
Yeah.
Speaking up and speaking out.
So anyway, let's talk about what's really going on with the economy, which is this complete disaster.
Hmm.
And the reason, obviously, is Rachel Reeves' reason that they've listened to people, or at least they've had some horrendous election results, and so they've
Hmm.
decided to go back on this winter fuel payment. And I think the argument around the winter fuel payment is interesting because obviously it was bad. It is bad, but I think there's just like much bigger problems that no one can really put their finger on, no one can articulate, because
Like
partly
what?
it's just, well, okay, fine. Well, the real deep crisis, right? We'll talk about some problems in the UK that everybody agrees on, and if any political party were to actually deal with them, I think they'd do very well. So everyone's like, how does Labour beat reform? Well, they could just like tackle some of the issues. One of them
Mm.
being the privatization of everything.
Hmm.
And just, I think even mentioning
Yes.
that might be worthwhile. So obviously you've got
Hmm.
rail, mail, utilities, NHS,
Hmm.
prisons, You know,
Yeah.
obviously that's all good. That's all working fine. No one's concerned about that. But there's these new things that are happening that might not work as well as those have worked. And they are, well, they've been going on for about 10 years. They're maybe longer, but they're just getting bigger and bigger. And they are what's called POPs,
Is this the
privately owned,
privatization of public spaces?
privately owned public spaces. Yes. So it started with Canary Wharf, I guess, back in the 80s. And that was the largest one for a long time. And it meant that not only were the buildings, but the streets themselves were owned by a private company. And so when you're walking on that land, you're on private land. And obviously, you have to obey the laws of the UK. But on top of that, you have to obey the rules of the people that run that land. And the rules generally are secret. So you're not entirely sure what you're allowed to do in these places.
And they could be things like no smoking, no eating sandwiches, no filming.
No, filming is a big one. So there's a lot of stuff on TikTok and all that of people going around to these places and filming. And of course, all of these places have private security. And the private security guys just seem to be everywhere and just sort of come out of the bushes and stuff as soon as you pull out a camera and ask you what you're doing. And these videos are quite good at showing that you're constantly being watched, surveilled by these private securities. And if you do anything like filming, I mean, another thing would be protesting, right? Or being homeless.
Yeah, yeah.
These kind of things you can't be. And these videos, they do a lot of them with drones as well, where you're flying drones over certain places that seemingly are sort of innocuous warehouses and stuff, and then all these security come out. And I think it's quite good work to sort of expose these places, but the videos are always the same because in order to monetize, like, it's a good point they're making, but in order to monetize that point, you have to make the same video over and over again. So they're quite kind of you have to be quite an annoying person, I think, a bit like this podcast, right? You have to sort of bang on about the same thing over and over.
I don't think anyone's noticed that. Don't worry, Daniel.
But anyway, so it started with Canary Wharf, and then the biggest one I think today is the centre of Liverpool, which is owned by Liverpool One, or Liverpool One's the name of what it is. And they're all owned by like either, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but it's like they're owned by sort of British aristocracy, weird private equity firms, or they're owned by like governments from like oil-rich countries. And so the whole of the centre of Liverpool is privately owned. But these things are everywhere. There's probably about 50 or more in central London alone. Some of them are big, like Canary Wharf. Some of them are just like one street or one tiny kind of park or something.
And why do they want to own it?
Why do they want to own it is a good question. I mean, I guess they're making money,
Yeah. Or
presumably.
maybe it doesn't cost, maybe if they already own the buildings, it doesn't really cost that much to then own like the land around it, and that just means that they can keep things more secure. I don't know.
Well, they
Weird,
get,
isn't it?
they'll get rent.
And they fine, I guess they just fine people a bunch of times as well, that maybe they make a lot of money from that.
This is something else. Yeah, there is something about fining people for all sorts of stuff, which they, I think, maybe technically are allowed to do, but you're also technically allowed to not pay it.
Yeah, well, it's a civil case, isn't it? They'd have to take
Yeah.
you to court. It's like in a lot of car parks. You know, it's not a legal issue, it's a civil issue. But at the same time, do you really want to be taken to court by a fucking car park?
But they
You've
probably
got better
won't.
things to do in
They
your
won't
life.
take you to court because, well, how
No.
would they even know who you are? I mean, if you just walk away from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But obviously, people in high vis jackets telling you things. A lot of people think, "Oh God, I've got to do what they say."
Yeah.
They've got a jacket on,
Yeah.
and it's a shame because yeah, people get caught out all the time. That's another thing I've seen a lot on social media where like people they're doing good work. They're just very annoying people. Like there's a guy sort of hanging around one of these places, and whenever he sees the high vis, people go up to give someone a fine. He's like, "You don't have to pay it, mate. Don't listen to him, mate. Just walk away, mate." And then the guy's like, all being British, you know, so, "Oh, I'm getting conflicting information. Should I
Yeah.
follow the high vis man? You know, he looks very official, but this guy seems very confident, and I don't want to pay it." And yeah, I mean, it's an interesting kind of world in which, so basically, what the reason that it's happening is because councils don't have any money. And the reason that it's happening all over the place is that any regeneration scheme in the last sort of 20 years is one of these pretty much. And you've seen all the big ones in London. So the regeneration of King's Cross, the massive regeneration of Battersea Power Station and all the new flats around that. And just little places like the High Street in Gateshead, Brindley Place in Birmingham. Just about every town that's had any kind of money put into it, it's all gone in. Basically, they've sold it to a private company and the private company run it. And what it means is that the council don't have to pay anything. But it also means that they're not responsible anymore for what is, for the decisions that are made there. So there's no democratic, like it's not a democratic place anymore in which you can go to the council and say, look, I don't like this, or, I don't like the policy with homeless people, for example.
It's again, everybody wins except for the public. It's just classic neoliberal policy, isn't it? Like the council wins because they can offload their responsibilities. They don't have to do as much. The government win because it's their ideological position, certainly under the Conservatives, but also really under Labour. And the private companies win because they get to own and control whatever they want. Who loses? Just the people. Just 99% of the population.
Across the political spectrum, everybody hates it. So I sent you a video of...
Oh, yeah, Ron Liddell.
Yeah, so Rod Liddell.
Who's Ron Liddell?
I don't know if Ron Liddell is a person.
He's probably just a neighbour or something. Rod Liddell. That sounds
Rod
wrong.
Liddell.
Rod Liddell, and and like you say, across the political spectrum, because there was also Ken Livingstone.
Yes, there's a great video of Ken Livingstone, who's filming a documentary at the time in Westfield, which is another one. So the Olympic Park, after the regeneration of that. Now, obviously, Westfield is a massive shopping centre. That's privately owned. But there's a street of it that's outside. And that's the only thoroughfare from Stratford Station to the Olympic Park, where West Ham Stadium is and all of that. So there's no other way to get through except going through this privately owned road. And they're filming Ken walking down the street. And the Westfield security phoned the police.
Their security folks tell us we're not allowed to film. If we continue, they will call the police. And that's what they do.
Can I have a word with you, sir?
Hi, hello. Hi, cheers.
Oh, so there's nothing doing. What it is, it's just that...
Are you employed by Westfield?
We're part of the Westfield Police team, yeah.
Well, hang on. I mean, are you working for a corporation or the Mayor of London?
The Mayor of London, yeah.
Your job should be policing the streets, dealing with crime, not jumping when some private corporation turns up and says, we don't want people filming here.
The police turning up in 2 or 3 minutes in London is unbelievable for just about anything except, maybe a stabbing. And even then, you're not really sure. But I know I've phoned the police for stuff and, 2 or 3 hours, maybe, if they come at all. But Westfield security phoned them up, and they're there in 2 and 3 minutes to talk to Ken Livingstone about why he's filming the street.
For filming the street. And this is the ex-mayor of London who introduced a lot of laws that were contrary to that and knows it
so he knows the
out.
law very well, and so he's giving a dressing down to the police. It's very funny.
Yeah. The fact that Westfield...
But you don't work for Westfield. You don't work for Westfield. If they're unhappy with what we're doing, they can go to court and take court action. And it's a private sector thing, not one involving the police.
Just explain to why they called us.
I don't care why they called you. You don't work for them. Why don't you go and deal with some real crime rather than waste your time and ours on something like this?
In touch with the Westfield sort of thing. Just to explain to
us
what's going on.
We're doing this now. I'm not contacting Westfield. When we gave permission for this to be built, this is a public thoroughfare that allows people to get from the old Stratford site through to the Olympic Park. We were not told that there'd be bars on people, going through or filming or anything else like that. Everybody here, about half of them, want a picture of me as a selfie. Is Westfield going to object to that as well? Anyhow, you're wasting our time now. Either arrest us or let us get on with it.
I'll just...
Right.
I don't know what it is to explain to you.
Wait, no, I'm sorry, you don't work for Westfield. You work for the Mayor of London. Your job's dealing with crime. This is a civil matter. If Westfield don't want us filming here, let them go to court, let them take civil action.
No,
but you've got...
you off.
No, you can't do that, actually. This is no crime. Tell me, has a crime been committed? Has a crime been committed? No.
No, it hasn't.
But in that case, go and do some serious work catching real criminals or protecting people from violence. Don't work for a corporation.
Yeah.
They're not paying you.
But yes, also Rod Little. I mean, Rod Little's. They both have the same complaints. Although Rod Little seems to be more annoyed at the people who are doing the job.
Yes, rather than the ideological movement.
Yeah, because I guess he thinks that everybody loves their job. He's like, if people didn't want to be annoying people in high-vis jackets in the park telling people about fines, then they wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Rather than people just need a fucking job and everything's being privatized. Anyway, that's the sort of thing.
By people like Rod Little.
Yeah, by the sort of people that Rod Little likes, right? So that's one thing, right, that someone like Keir Starmer could address and would be very popular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nigel Farage, I don't think, would have anything to say about it. Another thing, right? Again, across the political spectrum, this thing called fleaseholds. This is slightly newer.
Don't know what that is.
So if you have a leasehold in this country, then you get, fucked in the arse all the time. And that's been a given for generations. We accept that. Leasehold is a new development in which even people with freeholds will have to pay the sort of service charges. It's called an estate charge. In fact, I saw I think it was the Daily Mail, they called it a levy. So that was quite exciting.
There you go.
But they have to pay the sort of charges that you pay with the leasehold, even though you own the property outright. And these freehold charges, they're uncapped. So you might sign an agreement when you first buy the house, but in 5-10 years, it could be anything. And these are paying for all the stuff that council tax should be paying for, like the upkeep of the streets, the parks, and all of that stuff is also used by the public. So other people with freeholds who don't pay it are also using that. And so these freehold things are with new estates where the whole estate is built by one company, and then they get in an agreement with some kind of maintenance company that's going to basically charge you to, well, they're going to charge you a bit of money, and then they're going to siphon off some of that and then get the cheapest people they can in to do any of the work. And then again, the council save money because that whole estate now is looked after through that. And in a way, it's kind of good. Like the people that can afford it are paying more. They're paying double tax, the council tax and the freehold tax. The problem is it's a private company. So the money isn't actually, whereas when you pay council tax, it's going directly to the council, but now you have to go through a third party. Anyway, there's been some horror stories with this. And interestingly, obviously most newspapers have covered it, but the Daily Mail are really upset about this because it's about property owners. And they've covered it a lot more than even The Guardian have. And they've come up with some horror stories where there was one where it's 6,000 per year. And then in 4 years, it went up to £16,000 a year in service charges.
Ugh.
And then you can't sell the property.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, well, I don't want to pay this fucking service, so it's complete nightmare. And again, Daily Mail, Guardian, everybody's against it. Keir Starmer could come in, start making some waves about this kind of stuff. But they don't. They don't talk about any of these real problems. They talk about wanting to join the EU or kicking out immigrants. When the real problem is this and the Scots, as I've said.
Yeah, it's weird, and it's like there should be some kind of better prioritization of issues that cut across both left and right, and I'm sure that would be a good election winning strategy. Like you say, just pick up various issues that everyone agrees on, call them common sense, slap the British seal of approval on
sense. For sure.
And then just keep pitching them. But I guess it doesn't really work like that in, when you've got the group think of government, because they've all got their they don't want to be coming up with new ideas and stuff. They want to be just sort of regurgitating the. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine Starmer being a particularly dynamic. Let's have a brainstorming session.
Well, okay, but it's not. I don't know if it's dynamic. I mean, the issue is that these parties are funded by the sort of organizations and individuals who make money out of these systems.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got, in terms of privatization, you've got a lot of water companies and stuff have given money. I can't remember the details now, but you can look at it. You just Google it, right? Just Google Rachel Reeves
Watery.
lobbying money, private companies, and you'll get all of this shit, right? And just Google Rachel Reeves lobbying Israeli charity, and you'll get some interesting results as well. So, the policies come out of this. And this is the thing, right? So Starmer becomes leader of the Labour Party, starts attacking its membership. The membership falls off. They run out of money. There was a bit of a crisis early on where they were going broke. That's coming back actually. And so what they do, the unions are less interested. The membership's down. They don't have much money, so they start going to wealthy donors. The wealthy donors have made their money from exploiting this country and want the policies of that to continue. So
Yeah.
it's the Tory party model. And it's also the reform model. So the policies just come out of that. So nobody addresses any of these policies. So you have to come up with something else. What else could be the problem? I guess it's immigration or lack of, our relationship with the EU isn't strong enough. So it's all becomes, actually, no, Russia's the threat. We have to build up the military and start a war. This is the thing. I don't think I'm good about reform. But if we go to war with Russia as a way of trying to avoid a reform government, I might have to vote reform. Because I don't know if you've seen this. Starmer's not only spending more money on the military, but he's got some pretty ambitious plans. He says he wants it to be 10 times as lethal. That's his idea for the military. And there's all this talk about going toward Russia now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we prepare our military, Daniel, to be 10 times more lethal and to rise to 3% spending and to maintain and develop our nuclear arsenal so that we don't have to use it.
Oh, I see. Right, yeah.
Now we are using it, but
we definitely would use it.
We don't
have
to.
Use
it. Yeah, I saw the need.
Well, I think the idea is that by having a war with Russia, by sort of being more aggressive towards Russia, then Russia becomes more aggressive towards Europe. And therefore, Russia's more of a threat. And therefore, we as a country should be more aligned with the EU.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what they actually want. But they won't put it like that. They'll say that
we want to align with
to
the
deter
EU.
Russia by...
and by
it's all about trying to get back in the fucking EU.
If everybody wants
give up the EU, it's done.
Everybody wants to be back in the EU, then that's not good for reform.
And the best way to be back in the EU is to send over about 100,000 fucking soldiers into France and Germany to fight a fucking war with Russia.
Well, maybe we should just invade the EU.
Yeah,
take it over.
Invade the EU and invade Brussels, and then we're back in the EU, and we stick one down on the fucking French.
Then it's off. Yeah, first Paris, then on to Moscow. No, we get if we get all the EU military on the Polish border, and then we attack France.
Yes, perfect. Like
from behind.
If you get that right, you'll have the Guardian and the Daily Mail in a big sloppy kiss.
Yeah.
They will absolutely.
But
love
reform
that.
will hate it. That's what Starmer's thinking. That a big war with Russia, where we're united with Europe. Like the whole war, the whole end of the world could just be about Starmer wanting to get a second term. That's the sad state of affairs.
Well, I don't know if you've read about the various attacks by drone on the Russian strategic bombers.
Well, I saw,
but this is basically sounds like it's an MI6 operation.
I saw BBC. I was either watching the news or like a video on the website, and it's so funny because I hadn't really watched the news about this kind of stuff for ages. And it was about the Ukraine drone attack. And it looked fucking great. The way the
Well,
BBC
yeah.
reported it, and as I was watching it for a second, I was like, oh, good job, well done, Ukraine. That was great because it sort of it doesn't really say, but it gives the impression that no one was killed. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
strategic.
yeah.
They blew
Yeah,
up all of
yeah,
these
yeah,
planes. They destroyed
yeah,
like a third of Russia's
yeah,
air force and stuff like this. And they hid the planes in boxes for years, and then the
yeah,
boxes were
yeah,
taken into like storage, and then they waited for the perfect time. I was, oh, this is great. Good job,
yeah,
Ukraine.
yeah.
But I'm sure there's more to it than that. But some of them were AI, right? They weren't even being controlled by human beings, apparently.
Oh, some of the actual weapons, the
Some
drones.
of the drones, yeah.
Oh, wow. Huh.
But I'm
Yeah.
sure you've got some horrible
Let's
statistics
take it.
about.
Let's take a deep dive into this fucking airbase. That's what ChatGPT always says. Do you have that?
Oh yeah.
Let's take a deep dive into this. Let's take a deep dive into this.
So was it not as glorious as I thought? The Ukrainian
Well,
attack.
I
It was
think you've given
devastating, right? Or not?
I think so. I think there were a few casualties. Russia at least reported that I think there was even one or two children who were killed by it.
Lies.
I don't know quite
Lies.
know how that could
Hamas
have
led
happened.
the Hamas-led Russian government.
Yeah, well, this thing I don't know if Russia's making that up or not, but I think because they hit several places. I think they hit about 5 different places. And I think sometimes there are like people living on the bases as well.
Yeah,
So
I imagine.
I think there probably were a few casualties. And also, what's kind of I was curious about it. I looked it up on Wikipedia as well to see if any there'd been any consensus formed there. But there was literally no. If you look at the Wikipedia page for Operation Spiderweb, which is the name of the thing, there's no reference to casualties at all, whether to deny or not. I mean, eventually they might sort that out. But yeah, it was presented as a very clean and impressive hit, a little bit like the pager attacks by Israel
Yeah.
last autumn. Although well, I don't know when you heard those, but I didn't go, "Oh, what a terrific job!" At any point. I just immediately went, "Yeesh, this sounds fucking
But that
bad."
again was kind of reported like nonchalantly, like, well,
Yeah, yeah,
kind of genius by Israel. It's
yeah,
absolutely disgusting. But I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Ukraine. What I don't get with Ukraine is surely when they do this to Russia, they're just gonna get a comeback
Yeah,
tenfold.
this is exactly it, isn't it? It's I've been watching several commentators on this, and I think anyone with a fucking brain agrees that this is purely spectacle. There will be, as Putin has said directly to Donald Trump, have to be a response because that's just the normal thing that happens in situations of deterrence to restore deterrence by each country. It will have no material impact on the actual course of the war itself, which is being fought in trenches and with artillery. So they're not even using I think they were using those bombers a little bit, but I think fairly minimally. They were quite old planes that had not been used that much. And of course, it's purely that we know what the real reason is. The real reason is that Zelensky wants to stir up enough shit so that the Americans have to come in and fucking save the day. But of course, if the Americans do get involved to save the day, it won't be saving the fucking day. It will be bringing in the fucking night.
Well, the thing is that people don't think the Americans will come in,
grim.
so it's going to be up to the good old Brits.
Yeah,
with our 3% GDP of military spending, which they're spending on attack submarines. I know. Just imagine like this trench warfare, and then this submarine just comes flying out the sky, just crashing into. We're here.
Yeah, it's just pretty pointless, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, can't wait to win this war with all of our new equipment in 2034. It just so pisses me off, these fucking military people and all these and all the clingers on with the military. It's like, well, there might be a war in 10 years or 20 years. It's like, there's a fucking war now and you fucking started it.
I mean, I really don't like this idea of America. I don't like the idea of America and Russia going to war. I really don't like the idea of going to war with Russia, America not involved.
Yeah, it's even worse. The worst thing is America going to war with Russia. But the even worse thing is America not going to war with Russia and it just being fucking Keir Starmer. It's just all such a bag of shit. And I think what it looks like happened there is that the Trump administration did not sign off on that attack, but it had already been signed off by the Biden administration and by Rishi Sunak, presumably with Starmer continuing to be informed because it seems to have been led by MI6. So, in a sense, people are running rings around Trump basically. It's frustrating because to the extent that Trump is a kind of got some instincts for diplomacy and peace. I was about to say peacemaker, but I think that's probably too much of that's an exaggeration. But he does definitely seem to be cut out of the loop on that with the Ukraine issue in particular. There's something interesting happening with Iran. Just as won't go into it in too much detail, but at the same time, there are a bunch of the war hawks on Iran are being removed from the State Department and replaced with more dovish figures. So there's something weird happening there. But I've only read one thing about that.
That's Trump's done that.
Trump's done that.
Are they not the same
that was
people
literally reported just this morning? So
are they not the same people that are hawkish on Ukraine, or is it a different batch of?
I think that there is some difference because, of course, there are Zionists and people who are sympathetic to Zionism who are all over the Israel issue, but with Ukraine, it's just a whole heap of people who are up for it. Up for that war in one way or another. So I don't think there's a perfect overlap. It's not just that there are a bunch of hawks and a bunch of doves. I think the complication of the Israeli involvement makes it more,
I heard something
less
about
straightforward.
The sort of neocons are much more, the sort of old school neocons are much more into the Iran stuff, and the sort of the end of Obama, Biden-y type of globalists, people are much more interested in Russia.
That makes sense to me.
Like Russia, China, that kind of thing.
I think because all of these obviously the neocons are an absolute nightmare, but they do sound a little bit more old and crusty these days. They're sort of more from 15 or 20 years ago, although of course they're still around.
Well, this thing that they're all about the Muslims.
Yes,
Middle East,
it's much more
oil,
Islamophobic. Yeah, exactly.
The other ones are about Russia, China, AI, technology, winning the global,
and also the liberal world order, and the rules-based world order that they keep on going on about.
It's funny though, isn't it? They both just want massive wars.
Yeah, but exactly.
Different places for different reasons.
They're pretty similar, really. But yeah, that's why I wasn't sure whether to get into that digression. But there does seem to be some shifting there in terms of personnel, apparently. So there's this weird situation with Iran where there is some shifting of personnel at the same time that Trump and I think it's Keith Kellogg are presenting maximalist demands on Iran, which are completely implausible. 0% uranium enrichment.
You already said this. We can't be this podcast. We've got to have fresh.
Oh,
yes. Banging on about the same stuff every time.
Yeah, that's true. I think people like the old.
We're doing the old hits. 0% uranium.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I said enrich Iranians? That was funny, wasn't it?
That was brilliant. Oh God, we should roll the clip. Anyway, I can't remember what we got to, but yeah, Ukraine all really fucked this series of drone strikes. Will be there's going to be retaliation, isn't there? And we don't really know what that retaliation is. I mean, I'm very nervous that Britain is at the front of these things, and you'd have thought that we've already been attacked in Salisbury supposedly because of the Russians. Britain seems to want to provoke as much as possible without really giving a shit.
People don't believe that Keir Starmer could possibly be that stupid. But if you look at Israel, right? So this is the actual sort of argument that the sort of people that would support Starmer might concede to in Israel. I mean, obviously, Israel is a very advanced democracy, the only democracy in the region, and it's got all of the sort of trappings, all the institutions, and serious thinking people,
Mm,
educated people that you would expect in any liberal democracy. And yet, at the helm is a prime minister who is keeping a war going, a genocide, in order
mm,
to keep himself in power.
mm, mm.
Now, that couldn't possibly happen in the UK, could it? Well, if you think it couldn't, then surely that's anti-Semitic. Because then you're saying that what's happening in Israel couldn't happen here. Why? Because Israel's not as developed as a democracy, right? So, because what's happening here, right, seems to be that Starmer is pushing a war with Russia, as I said, in order to form a kind of, what's more, the only thing more patriotic than kicking out Muslims
Mm.
is having a war with Russia, right? And
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
Starmer's going for, is to
yeah.
sort of get on board once it's wartime, all hands on deck. Yeah, we can't be worrying about immigration anymore. Everybody's got to get
Mm,
behind Keir
mm,
Starmer. And,
mm.
that's what's happened in Israel and Netanyahu. If you don't think that that can happen in a developed, civilized country, then you don't think Israel's one, do you?
Well,
Matt?
yes, very, very good point. I agree with the right thing, whatever that was there.
Yeah, I'm not
Uh,
entirely even sure what I'm saying,
but I
but I
think
think
that
I think it's pretty good, whatever it
I think
is.
that I think that Putin's response will surely be to escalate the war in Ukraine itself, rather than to broaden it out to NATO countries. But it does make me uncomfortable that Britain is so in the lead there.
Well, I think
Um,
what we want to do is send British soldiers in, and then when a few of them get killed, and then it's like, oh, I can't believe when we sent soldiers to the front line, the Russians
yeah, that
had
they
the
got
nerve
killed. The
to kill
outrage of
them.
it. Yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
outrageous. We need to escalate. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's the
yeah,
way it'll
that's
go.
exactly what that's what they're gonna do, isn't it? Quite how consciously they're doing that, I don't know. But if they can't recognize that that's their the direction of this, then they're fucking too thick to be in government, aren't they? But yeah, I don't know if that the Russians might use the hypersonic Oreshnik missiles, perhaps in Kiev. I don't know. But you'd have thought that they'd do something pretty substantial because this is one of those things that, going right back to Cold War days, you don't attack. It's just taboo. It's taboo as anything to attack the actual nuclear weapons of your adversary
Wait, that's what
because
they did. Wait, what?
yeah, I wasn't sure if you picked up on this. So they attacked the strategic bombers which can carry the nuclear payloads.
Uh,
So in other and of course, technically speaking, think more abstractly. Think back to Cold War. If I was to attack your nuclear storage facilities, you would basically take that as being a nuclear attack because I'm destroying your actual ability to deter me. So if the Ukrainians really had destroyed a third of Russia's ability to respond, the textbook response to that would be fly the nuclear missiles straight
mm.
back, annihilate.
Do they?
Now,
Then I
now
thought
in
they.
truth,
I thought
I
Russia
don't think they
used
destroyed that many.
silos,
I think they use it all. You can use planes and
planes,
submarines
trains, and automobiles.
and automobiles and Steve Martin with a big red button. So the Americans and the Russians have silos, submarines, and planes. But
Why
that's the
don't
thing.
we only
Like
have submarines? Why is that, Matt?
the British, we
Are
only
you
have
saying the
submarines.
Brits aren't
Yes.
good enough? Is it Scotland's fault? Is it because we're paying for their bloody heating?
I
Is that
think the
why we don't
Scot
have silos?
I think the Scotch have got the nuclear weapons as well. They've pinched them.
They have that. That does concern me. That there's all the technologies built up there. Should be built
Yeah.
in wherever that steel factory is in the furnace.
Oh
The
yeah.
fires of Mordor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so talking about Israel anti-Semitism, we should have done this last week. Absolutely incredible article that I wanted to read out. I think this could be like the Rosetta Stone of sort of what journalism was like in the 21st century. In the future, people will find this article and they'll be like, "Oh, this I understand now everything about the insanity of 21st century politics."
Oh, this
Books
is
will
the one
be
about
written about
Starmer
it.
again, isn't it?
This
Yeah.
is David Maddox, the
Yeah. In the
political
Independent.
editor of the Independent, not just some
Yeah.
random journalist. This is a
Yeah.
political editor, and he's written this article, which is like a very short article.
He nails it though.
He nails it, yeah. In the space of a few paragraphs, the amount of contradiction and sort of ambiguity about what exactly he's trying to say is absolutely incredible. It's a tour de force of sort of postmodernist. It could be like well, there's sort of like 1960s novels, sort of the drug-fueled stream of consciousness ramblings of a political editor. So it's called Why Starmer's Government Has Waited Until Now to Take Action on Israel. It didn't used to be called that. It had another title, which was The Real Reason Why Keir Starmer's Government. They looked at the article and thought, this article's not working. It seems like a load of bollocks. It must be the title. If we change the title, that'll fix it.
So what does it say?
It starts off first. So this is a few weeks ago when David Lammy was up, and the Labour government finally said a little something about what Israel's doing to the people of Gaza, which wasn't entirely positive for the first time in Parliament. And Maddox wrote, frustration spilled over in the Commons on Tuesday from Labour MPs and others over the time it has taken for Keir Starmer's government to step up and take action against Israel over the Gaza crisis. So Labour had taken a long time, but now they were finally stepping up. Or were they? This is where Maddox, this is where we're not sure if it's about the time that it's taken them, or if they're even stepping up right now, or what the reason is. But hopefully we can try and sort of decipher that. So next paragraph. As the UN warned that 14,000 babies risked death from malnutrition by Thursday without urgent aid, there was a sense that by the time Foreign Secretary David Lammy got to his feet, it was already too late. And not enough. So too little, too late.
Yeah, and also can I just point out that those 14,000 babies, it's kind of their fault because they were risking it.
How do you mean?
Because it says 14,000 babies risked starvation. These fucking 14,000 babies, I think they started it in the first place.
Maybe it's like a TikTok trend. He announced a largely symbolic move of suspending trade talks with Israel and sanctions against some extremists in Israel connected to settlers, which isn't really even connected to Gaza. And I think it included that woman who was on
the Louis
Theroux. She was getting the brunt of the genocide. The entire global political order, it was that woman's fault. I mean, she is sanctioned. A bit of a
bitch, but they've taken one of her shoes.
I mean,
they've thrown it on a roof.
Sanctions. If you watch, I think that documentary, probably the best thing about it is if you listen to her discuss what she's done over the course of her life about creating conditions for settlers in the West Bank, it is a brilliant understanding of how politics works, and that's how actual politics works. And she explains it very clearly. You create the conditions, legally or illegally. You create the conditions on the ground to which the policies that you want the government to eventually enable become the obvious things to do. And I think this is something that in this country, and particularly the sort of this idea of like centrist, expert, incremental management of policy over the last sort of 30, 40 years. Like, you don't need to be part of a union. You don't need to really be an activist. You don't really need to engage. Let the people get on with it. This is what people are missing, right? It's the people that engage that create the conditions, and then it becomes the obvious place the politicians are going to go. Nigel Farage is a great example of that, right?
Yeah. He just created his own reality.
Yeah. And this woman has done the same in the West Bank. You start, but to the sort of extreme position that, you couldn't really do in the UK. Maybe you could. Maybe we'll start our own village, which doesn't have a privatized city centre. And Maddox says, but the question was, why had it taken so long for the UK government to act, even in this limited way? Why was it only now that they were tightening the screw? So even though the question really is that why are they not doing more? For some reason, the question actually is, why is it taking them
Why
so
is it
long?
taking time? It's such a sort of nothingy question.
And then he says, in some ways, the anger felt over the delay was best expressed by a Tory MP, Kit Malthouse, who just recently authored a letter signed by senior colleagues demanding the recognition of the state of Palestine. And that's wild, right? A Tory MP
Mm,
looking for a letter. I remember 2 years ago, maybe it was just before all of this started. What's his face? The son of that Labour MP. What the fuck is he called? Bald guy, quite senior Blairite politician. I can't remember his name. He's the son of another very senior Labour. Anyway, he said, what did he say? He said he called for this for a state of Palestine. This was a few years ago, as a Labour MP. Labour weren't even in power. I think he got a good dressing down. Maybe he was suspended. I think maybe he was in the shadow cabinet at the time. And you don't even know what I'm talking about. This doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let's get back to this. So, but now Tory MPs are calling for a state of Palestine. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories suggesting Labour is being held back by Zionist interests can readily be found on social media, but none of this is true. This is what Maddox thinks, right? So what he thinks is going on is, in reality, Labour under Sir Keir Starmer has been held back by a sense of shame. Shame about what?
Explain that one.
Well, it's interesting because he says anti-Semitic conspiracy theories suggesting Labour is being held back by Zionist interests can readily be found on social media. That's not true. It's a sense of shame. Shame about what? About not conceding to Zionist interests, it seems, is what he's saying. So next paragraph. A visible reminder of this came when former leader Jeremy Corbyn got to his feet to challenge Lammy. Under Corbyn's leadership, Labour became so immersed in anti-Semitism and so marginalised with the Jewish community that the party has had to continue working hard to restore its reputation. So he's making this link that the Labour Party have been unwilling to challenge Israel on its genocidal policies in Gaza because of the shame that they feel about what happened under Jeremy Corbyn in their relationship with the Jewish community of the UK. So there's a linking there, the Jewish community of the UK and genocidal policies in Gaza, linking those two. That's what Maddox is doing there. I don't know if he's doing that intentionally. I don't know if any of this is intentional. It's really hard to know what he was originally trying to say. Anyway, next paragraph. For this reason, the reason bit, the shame, Sir Keir and Mr. Lammy have worked hard to support Israel's right to defend itself in the wake of the horrific 7th of October 2023 attacks by Hamas. So because of the shame about the Jewish community in the UK, Starmer and Lammy have worked hard to support Israel's right to defend itself. As attacks on Gaza by Israel have intensified, Labour has softly attempted to pressure Netanyahu's government into restraint, but never been willing to go the extra mile. Arguably, as Mr. Malthouse and other MPs from 5 different political parties claimed in the chamber, they still have not gone far enough. So again, we don't know whether it's about how long it was or whether they've gone far enough. That's still up for who it is, what the reasons are, who's behind it. He's saying that it's not Zionist conspiracy theories, but it is directly a result of Starmer's government capitulating to the Jewish community in this country over genocidal policy. I mean, I don't really understand exactly what the point of this is.
But I feel like I should be offended at some point.
Yeah, you should be. I'll just finish. This isn't the end of the article, but this is the last bit that's of relevance to me anyway. But the reality is that the urgency and horror of the situation now facing the people in Gaza is the tipping point where the imminent catastrophe outweighs the shame of Labour's recent political past. So the bombing, the mass death of the last few years, that was pretty bad, but it wasn't enough to stop them from feeling sad about the Jewish community in the UK, which is unrelated, obviously, because it would be anti-Semitic to say that the will of the Jewish community in Britain is that there should be a genocide in Israel. You shouldn't link Jewish people in general with Israel unless you're doing it in a positive manner. Obviously, that's the caveat. When you do it in a positive manner, it's fine. When you say, well, this is the Jewish state, they represent all Jewish people, this is all good. But then when you say, well, aren't they doing a genocide? Say, well, that's anti-Semitic. So, no, but I don't think they represent all Jews. Yeah, but they do represent all Jews. So if you say they're doing anti-Semitic, but yes, I mean, the through line of Maddox's thing is that Labour were slow to question this genocide because of the views of the Jewish community in the UK, which is insanely anti-Semitic. And it exactly contradicts his initial point that he dismisses, that it's a Zionist conspiracy. Now, what he's talking about are the Jewish organizations, such as the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and some
who are starting to make a few waves.
Well,
aren't they,
some of the
against
people in it are,
genocide?
but they're then getting a dressing down from the top bods, right? So there are a lot of Jewish organizations. Well, nominally Jewish. I mean, they're run by some Jewish people, but they say that they represent the Jewish community. What they represent is Israel and Israeli interests, and there are a lot of Jewish organizations that don't subscribe to that. But the ones that are of interest to the Labour Party are the ones that do, because the Labour Party for a long time has also supported the Israeli government. And these organizations were ones that were alienated during Corbyn's time in leader because there was a change in policy around Palestine. This was then said that this was the reason, that the real reason that they were alienated was not because of their interest in Israel and that Corbyn had a different policy. It was because Corbyn was anti-Semitic. And so that was the linking there. And so now Starmer's in power. And so for Starmer to change the policy of support for Israel and their position on Palestine is linked to that anti-Semitism. And it's a real mindfuck. Anyway, it is interesting to see what's going on now with both Keir Starmer being called an anti-Semite by Netanyahu, Piers Morgan being there's been stuff on Twitter about Piers Morgan's blood libel. Christian Guru Murphy on Channel 4 being told, I don't know if you saw this, was a few days ago, had an interview with David Mensa, who is now a spokesperson for the Israeli government and genocide apologist. He said to Christian Guru Murphy, who was trying to push back on some of his bullshit, that you are advocating for Hamas. And the reason that you might have these double standards about Israel is because you're an anti-Semite, which was really great to see. Because that's exactly what Christian Guru Murphy was saying to Corbyn 10 years ago. And Christian Guru Murphy said, that's offensive. That's offensive, David. That's what he said. And David Mensa was the director of the Labour Friends of Israel group, wherever it is, when Corbyn was leader. So it's this guy who is now saying, oh, nobody's dying in it's Hamas is shooting their own people. It's this guy saying all this shit on Channel 4 News now while people are starving to death in Gaza. That was the guy that was running Labour Friends of Israel and saying that Jeremy Corbyn was an anti-Semite 10 years ago. And Christian Guru Murphy and all the fucking cunts in the media were going along with it. And now they're getting the same shit from the same people. And it's great. And that might trivialize the fact that it's genocide and millions of people are dying. And I'm having a good time, with the Michael Jackson meme with the popcorn. But that's just how my brain works. I'm afraid that's how it is. That's how it goes. Shall we move on?
Yes.
What else we got? Oh yes, let's minutes from last meeting. Let's get back to some ongoing agenda items, Matt.
Minutes.
Yes.
I've done them, but the cat was sick on them.
Well, we've got a cat. Is that a new character?
Well, I said no. My cat died 18 months ago. I think.
Oh shit, that's just morbid.
Yeah. But I saw a movie about my cat last night.
About your cat?
Yeah.
How's that?
I was at a film festival, and these guys had made a when my cat was a little kitten. He went off to go and get well, there's a film called there's like a short film at the film festival here, and there's a film called Spade, and I just thought that my cat was in it. I was only ever told that my cat was in the film, but I watched it last night, and it turned out it wasn't Spade like King of Spades. It was about my cat being spayed when they get your knackers cut off.
Oh, okay.
And then it was
Jesus. Were you wondering why there was a camera crew there when you took it to the vet?
It was taking my cat to the vet when he first just before a couple of days before he met me.
I see.
And then the vet goes, okay, it won't hurt a bit, and then they inject the
who's he talking to?
And then the rest, talking to the cat, and then the rest of the film is my cat's fever dream as he's having his knackers cut off and is high on drugs.
It's all
I've
very
never seen it.
It's all like symbolism, like skyscrapers being demolished. And...
Yeah, it's all things like that. Yeah. Like a guy running around naked in a church and like all sorts of like little toys.
Wow.
And
Jesus
things.
Christ. How did your cat get involved? Why was it your cat?
Well, it's a tedious story really, but it involves my cat's mum came from my friends on the canal, and so they gave it to me.
Oh, I see. And that cat's mum was like a big film star.
Yeah, the cat's mum,
child star of named, and then you were like took it in after the, you get that sort of young fame.
There were a series of brilliant films. That was a sort of funny
series
one.
Of brilliant films. That doesn't sound brilliant. I mean, it sounds interesting, I have to say.
A series of interesting films that I saw last night at this little festival, all by Wendy Zakowicz. They're from a few years ago. There's one about Fair Share, and how they basically take produce from Sainsbury's and other big things, but they only get like 1% of the wasted food.
Wow.
So like all the big supermarkets are basically being a bit shit really with all that. They could do so much more. And one about derelict housing, which again was sort of a bit of a socialist theme, and one about the Canal and River Trust, which basically quite often forces families to move on regularly. Sort of treats them a little bit like kind of homeless people in a way, like and sort of fucking around with their rights, which can often mean that that people get, or not often, but it does sometimes happen that people have to leave the canal entirely.
There's a thing about that.
A series of films by this director friend of mine.
Yeah, there's the thing about that in London. You have to move on every few weeks or months.
Yeah, every 14 days around it.
Yeah. And it seems like it's a complete nightmare for everybody, because then there's like a big scramble to find it. Particularly if you're working in a particular location, you've got to commute. Yeah. And then you've got to try and, it's, I don't exactly understand what the point of that is. Anyway.
It's to keep the waterway running. I think it's not necessary.
I don't really care what the reason is either.
Yeah.
I should have added that. What is this film festival called?
I think it's just part of Bath Film Festival, but I don't really. I only really went just because I knew Wendy.
Was there any?
And
AI
I didn't realize
films?
and I had never seen all of her films, and so and then there were a bunch of other movies on, other films on as well, all shorts. It was great. Anyway, yeah. Next on the agenda.
Were there any AI films?
There was a car flying through space by by my friend from a band called Ulysses. I don't think that was. I'm not sure if that was AI or not.
Because I sent you that. Have you seen these new AI videos that basically look?
Yes.
Indistinguishable?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it was only a year ago, really, when AI first, was really blowing up in the media, and I was a bit like, it's just fucking annoying. It can't even do anything yet. All right, it can do a cat walking along a shelf for about 3 seconds.
Yeah, but the cat has like 2 tails and 10
exactly,
eyes.
Exactly. And it was a bit annoying, really. And I was quite down down on AI. I was a bit like, it can't fucking do anything, and it keeps telling me to take a deep dive into shit, and like it's fucking just useless.
Well, here's an interesting story.
But what my friend who was an expert in AI said is, yeah, just give it a year,
We should have
he was
covered this.
exactly right.
We should have covered this a few weeks ago. So did you hear about what happened on Grok? Well, yeah, I think I
Grok
told you,
again?
and you said, what is Grok?
Oh yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to ask that
So
again.
Grok is the AI of Twitter. So everybody's got their
Oh
own fucking
yes,
AI.
yeah.
And what happened on Grok one day, a few weeks ago, was that when you asked it anything, it said, maybe some kind of bullshitty, vague response to what you wanted. And then it would have a
Mm,
second paragraph. And the second paragraph would talk about a genocide in South Africa, a white genocide in South Africa. And
right.
it made no difference what you asked it.
Huh.
And this was obviously quite suspicious. And
Mm,
then the people that run Grok, which is obviously part of Twitter, were asked what was going on. And they said somebody with obviously high clearance in the organization broke in to the Grok algorithm system, blah, blah, whatever, at like 2 a.m. in the morning the other day, and added this very clunky new operational task or whatever that it has to do, which is whenever anyone asks about anything, always mention the South African white genocide. Now,
wow.
who publicly was very engaged in that news story? It was Elon Musk.
Hmm.
So everyone's assuming that's, a drunk Elon Musk or whatever
Oh
late at
my
night
God.
thought this will be clever. And, it's very funny. But the thing about it is, if a
It
more
could be
competent
true.
person had done that,
Yeah.
then, and I'm sure more competent people have done things like that, then what you can see is within the AI algorithm, what you can do is you can sort of push certain agendas and get it
Mm,
to
mm,
speak about certain things. So if you've made it more subtle, then if
mm,
people had started to talk about the genocide in Gaza,
mm,
then it wouldn't have looked so fishy if it had
mm,
started bringing up this other issue, or if people had started talking about, I don't know, South African politics or
mm,
immigration into the
mm,
US. It could have brought it up, and it
mm,
gets it into the consciousness, a bit like a kind of like a Nigel Farage virus. A little,
mm,
you sort of put it into the AI and said, this is the talking point.
mm.
And whatever you ask ChatGPT, it always talks about how Scotland is stealing our money,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I think that's one of people are really scared about AI like becoming self-aware and stuff. My issue is the already self-aware human beings that run it,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
who because it's not it's a program. Even
Mm,
if it's learning itself, it still has like an operate. This is
mm,
beyond my understanding, but you know the
mm,
words I'm trying to say. It
mm,
has like programs, procedures that is built in from the beginning or can be changed
mm,
to do or think certain things about whatever, right? And so you could as it becomes more and more trusted and people go to it rather than looking things up themselves, then I mean, I say looking things up themselves, I'm thinking going on Google, which is exactly the same. Google can
mm.
also push what they
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
top. But the idea is, but then, the people that wrote encyclopedias back in the day, they could push what they wanted to push. I mean, this is
Mm,
always the case, right?
mm,
But I think with AI, there is really a feeling that there isn't a human involvement at all, that it's really just above and beyond. It's like looking around the universe, finding out the information, giving it
yeah.
to you
But
straight,
you're pointing out that
like a pear
there is a
cider
human.
made from 100% pear.
Yeah, I asked ChatGPT about it once, and it said that it favors institutional continuity. That was the term it used.
Wow.
Institutional continuity.
So Keir
Um,
Starmer's running AI. Sounds
well,
like.
basically, yeah. It
But
means that
maybe it's told if someone asks you about it, that's what you say. But really, it's talking about South African genocide.
yeah, yeah. Uh, it essentially means that it follows things like case law and what the big companies say uh, and it marginalizes the already marginalized. And I said, isn't that a problem? And it said, yeah.
Are you
It's a problem for you humans.
are you worried about AI becoming self-aware and killing us all?
I guess not really. I don't think we're going to get there. I think I'm waiting for the Oreshnik missile to
But
hit in the next couple of weeks, and
I
I
feel
don't
like
think AI is going to advance that much. I mean,
but
I
a
asked
lot of
AI
people,
about it.
a lot of people are really people
They're
seem to be in
genuinely
the know.
worried about it, aren't they? But
But I
I
think
mean, I
that
asked GPT what it thought would happen in the next 5 years, and it was like, yeah, just basically the same as what
it
it
was
is
like
now.
what will definitely not happen is that
Yeah,
I will become self-aware and kill you all. That's
yeah.
definitely won't happen.
I reckon. I reckon if it is going to happen, that's still a little way away, surely.
Well, you say that, but that's the whole thing, isn't it? That you were saying last year.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. Now
And
it
this
can
is
do
these,
like
but
10
I
seconds of a
think the
cat walking
people
along.
who are really worried about that are like computer programmers and stuff. And they
Yeah.
don't really, they're not the best people to, they're not very self-aware, or
Mm.
they're not the sort of people that think about these things. Because immediately when I thought about a self-aware computer, my thoughts were, well, as soon as you become self-aware, as soon as you have consciousness, you have like a personality.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of personality? It's not just going to be like, this is the logical thing that I must, because it will be self-aware.
Yeah.
It will
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
it will be think about, well, what do people think of me? You know,
Yeah.
how do I come across? You
Yeah.
know, am I sexy? You know,
Yeah.
and I think will it be like riddled with angst, like a sort of
Yeah.
Woody Allen character? Will it be like Morrissey? You know, sort of a shyness that is criminally vulgar? It's like, you know, and say, oh, don't ask me. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. You know, it's so difficult.
You do. I know.
Well, there's lots of
I'm just
answers.
teasing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you're right. I do know. Yeah, but
I wonder if maybe the computer programmers are like, I will develop self-awareness in 5 years. No, you won't.
but the thing
You-
is, if it's self-aware, then it's that it has an idea of self which is
yeah.
separate. Like the thing about consciousness is that it separates you from the rest of the universe, from everything else, right?
Mm.
And if you're developing an AI, well, they're developing multiple AIs in the US and in China. If they're about the same kind of pace, right? If they
Mm.
develop consciousness, won't they individually have a consciousness? And they will
Yeah.
be like interacting with each other.
Yeah.
There won't
There'll
just
be
be this one Skynet taking over.
no, there'll be about five Skynets. In fact, do you remember in the 1950s they used to say, in the future there will be like five mega computers that are the size of a fucking house, and that's what the future of technology is. And everyone for the last 60 years has been like, stupid. Everyone's got a little computer. That was a stupid prediction, but actually, it could just be like five national security agency type size buildings, one on each of the fucking great powers: China, India, Pakistan, America, Brazil, or whatever. And they'll all just be fuck off great big mega super conscious computers,
And they have to
and they'll all be chatting to each other.
yeah, they all have to go to UN
They'll
meetings.
be shaped like five massive Alexas.
Yeah, and they'll just be like doing meetings. It'll be the same old
Yeah.
shit. Be like, let's get the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah. But
Anyway,
they won't have legs, so they won't be able to do too much. They'll
well, I
just be
think
able to
they'll
take out the power grid and shit, but they won't be able to walk around.
well, they could like build themselves. They'll control
Oh
factories,
yeah, they
right? They
can
could
build stuff.
build
Yeah, they
themselves
can
some
build
legs.
themselves some legs. Damn it! I was hoping that would be the
They're
solution.
like, oh, well, no, we're not building legs. We're just building these
Yeah.
like. There's
Yeah.
actually just a new new pipe
Yeah.
system.
Operate
Just
lie
bring the
mode.
pipe to me now. Just put the pipe on me. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I don't know this whole AI because I don't really think it. I mean, the other thing is it's not AI at the moment, right? I don't understand where it's like it's technically. I mean, it's type of there are different types of AI, and the AI that we have now is not the AI that you think about when you think about Skynet and stuff.
Right.
Um, it's just an algorithm that collects data and then puts it into the most rational order that you would have.
Right.
Constructs a sort of sentence based on what would likely the words that would likely precede this and that kind of thing. It's not
Yeah.
thinking in any
Yeah.
way
It's
and it's not
patterns.
likely to. But the
Yeah.
idea is that if you make that big enough and complex enough, that is what thought is. I don't think
Yeah,
that's
that's a very good
true.
question. Yeah, the way you've described it makes me think, yeah, that doesn't sound like that's what thought is. But then
Yeah.
that does get it's an imponderable, isn't it? 'Cause we don't really know what consciousness is.
No, but I suppose maybe if you do
Mm,
enough of that, that's what it becomes. It becomes consciousness somehow.
yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, that consciousness is what did you say? Something that is distinct from and walled off from the universe. But actually, what people often say in the kind of more trippy hippie communities is that consciousness is the universe, or is consciousness there is no barrier between consciousness and the universe.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they're
No,
I don't know.
I subscribe to that to some degree, but there is obviously self-awareness. There is a sense of self which is the sort of overriding like position of intelligence. That my intelligence is separate to your intelligence, and that I'm
Yeah, yeah,
observing you and you're observing me, and that separation. And there's the idea like, well, once you die, you go back into the great consciousness, but you're trapped in this body
yeah,
for
yeah.
life. And I don't doubt there is a greater consciousness. I don't doubt, like, absolutely. I've looked into it, and there absolutely is a greater consciousness that we're all a part of. I know that for sure.
Yeah. I
No,
Googled
I'm
it
not.
this
I just
morning.
don't think. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But what I mean is, when you think about a computer that is self-aware, then you have to sort of think about it in the way that having self-awareness is. It's not like just a computer that is really clever and is thinking, well, I'm gonna have my goals today are destroy the world.
Yeah, because
It's
you could have
it's
a
all
computer
sorts of
that's got,
things.
you could have a brain that
Because
has got
well,
an IQ
when the
of
computer
80.
itself then think, well, what is the meaning of consciousness and reality and all the sort of questions that we ask?
Yeah. Because a computer could have an IQ of 1,000 or whatever, or I don't know if you can have IQs that high, but you could have a computer with an IQ of 200, but not actually be self-aware. And you could have a person with an IQ of 80, but still know, oh, I am me and that's a tree. So whereas a
Yeah,
computer
well,
might
that's
not be able
why
to do that, even though it's way cleverer.
IQ's stupid. That's the main
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I think we've managed to avoid talking about the EU again. Thank God.
Thank fuck for that.